YouTube Ozzico and the Goat House is back with a massive fantasy football preview for 2023. This is going to show you how to win your fantasy draft, win your fantasy league here. A bit of a cheat sheet strategy guide for the draft, some tips, players I really like, not only at the top, but throughout the entire draft. The rookies I really like, players to beware of. I got a couple mock drafts I threw in here. So a lot to go over here. Cannot wait. Please like, subscribe to notifications on full NFL coverage here, especially in season. That's right around the corner. Cannot wait for our weekly picks, and we have a lot more where that came from. Follow us on Twitter. Twitter subs get exclusive content, including access to fantasy leagues, picks leagues, things like that. Twitter link pinned in the comments, along with other social media links, and our sponsors, including Liquid IV, code GOAT, 20% off. So let's just start with round one. There's a lot to get through here. I'll put timestamps in so you can see the different sections. It's definitely something you want to keep handy. So how to win your fantasy draft. Let's start with how to win round one. These are the players I want to come away with. And I don't really care what other people are doing. I don't really care, typical rankings. This is kind of what I feel good about here. And Justin Jefferson is the player I would draft first overall. So if I got the first overall pick, or maybe he's available second or third, that's the guy I'm targeting. I would feel very good about Jamar Chase in the first round as well. Obviously, that early portion, could be had at pick 3, 4, around that range. Even later, that'd be great. Travis Kelce, got to throw him up there. It's a guy that I would probably take earlier than other people, but he is starting to go in the middle of the first round. And it's something I told myself at the end of last year. There was tight ends I really thought were going to be better than they were last year. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, most of us are getting no points or very little points from our tight ends every week, and it'd be so comforting, having that big-time tight end that's consistently getting points, and you got a guy, Travis Kelce, that's getting more points than most of the top receivers. So, you'd feel safe with him. You get big-time points. You don't have to worry about that tight end position. Easier to find guys that can get points, get produced points later in the draft, later in the first round at running back and receiver, where a tight end, some of those guys might be giving you no points each week. So Travis Kelce, I told myself at the end of last year, like, God, I'm going to really want Travis Kelce next year. So I guess it depends on where you're at in the draft. Christian McCaffrey, there's always a little injury concern. A few years ago when he's on the Panthers, I kind of made a rule for myself. It was a few years straight to not take Christian McCaffrey, but he looks like he's in the best shape of his life. He looks really strong, looks really good on the 49ers. And obviously, what he does, in the passing game as well is huge. And, factoring this is all PPR based, it's absolutely huge. So McCaffrey is a guy that I'm considering towards the top. I think a lot of people are considering for the number 1 or number 2 overall pick. And then Bijan Robinson, it's a rookie, but the Falcons drafted him very high for a reason, and he catches the ball better than people think. We saw that. We kind of see that in training camp, but he's going to get a load of action, obviously, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was the number 1 running back this year in fantasy as a rookie, maybe the rushing leader. So I really want, and of course there's other guys that maybe you would rank ahead of those guys, and they're top players for a reason, but my thinking, and I've had success, plenty of success in fantasy, kind of going with the guys that, that I am really feeling, that I have a gut feeling about. And these are the guys. I want to come away with one of those guys. But maybe you get unlucky and some of those guys off. That's definitely going to be the case for some of you. Maybe me. Those guys can be off the board. Maybe you have the 11th or 12th pick. There's the next few guys that I really like that could be available in that range. Stephon Diggs, I've had Diggs a lot over the course of his career. I've had him a lot in fantasy, and he's always done me right. He's always been very, very solid. So that's probably the next up guy. And then Tony Pollard, I feel really good about this year. He most likely will be an early second round guy, but I would actually consider him over others, if you're at the end of the first round. And same with Nick Chubb. I think this could be a career year coming up. No more Kareem Hunt. I know they like Jerome Ford. He's currently injured, but Chubb should get, and then you're going to, Watson being there, going to spread defenses out at least a little bit more, so that should open things up for Chubb. So those are players I do really like at the end of first round. But for me to say yes, I won the first round, or for you, if I'm grading your first round, I need you to get one of these guys on this page. So that's kind of where I'm at with round 1. Looking at round 2, there we see Tony Pollard, Nick Chubb again. I expect them to be at the top of round 2, but I would be good if those other guys are off the board. The other guys we talked about, including Diggs, if they were off the board, I'd be good with taking those guys 11th or 12th overall. I would be. So don't feel like you're ever reaching, because most people say, or the average draft position, I don't worry about that too much. But Pollard and Chubb are guys I feel really good about. Derrick Henry feels like an early second rounder. It's another great guy. All those running backs are pretty much in the same boat. So, yeah, I'm kind of giving you these players and, who I like, who stands out for me, who's going to work out for me, doing this in the past, when for myself, like going in the draft, it's always worked out. But, so if you take, for an example, if you take Pollard, Chubb, and Henry, and maybe you like Henry the best of those three, go with Henry. Go with Henry. Maybe you like Pollard a little bit more. So kind of just use this as to narrow things down. And then I do want people to kind of go with their gut. But I like the players that I'm going to mention throughout this video. And then A.J. Brown, I think is a safe pick, in the second round. And Garrett Wilson, I really like for this year because he really caught fire at the end of last year. Now he has Aaron Rodgers. I feel really like these all these guys are early second round guys, and some of them are going to slip through. If those guys are gone, I really want a legit number one tight end. I really want a solid tight end. I don't want to mess around with no maybes or a guy that's going to get 2 points one week and then, maybe he'll get 20-something points the next week. But I don't want to mess around with that. So I consider Mark Andrews in the second round, even though average draft position maybe says very late 2 or early 3 or maybe even mid 3. I'd be good with Andrews at the end of round 2. And quarterbacks seem to be going earlier and earlier, to get a surefire one that is going to stay healthy and get you big points. Because remember, quarterbacks score the most points in fantasy. I got to remind people that they score the most fantasy points, out there. So you want to keep it that way. You don't want to have a mediocre quarterback and not getting that many points. So towards the end of the second round, definitely would consider Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. I wouldn't be too afraid to kind of take, a quarterback early on, I suppose. And then Dalvin Cook, just signed with the Jets pretty recently. Where is he going to go? Right now it's hard to go, it's hard to come up with an average draft position because, how many drafts have happened since Dalvin Cook has been on the Jets. But he'll kind of be ranked by people much lower in this. But, Breece Hall, they're going to take it easy with him coming back because they have Dalvin Cook, and they're going to run a solid outside zone offense, which Dalvin Cook fits. He's going to be very productive. He's going to catch the ball as well. So I'd consider him in round 2. So it's another guy I like there. And then looking at round 3, Mark Andrews at the top. It's a must for me to get a very good, legit tight end. I told myself that at the end of last year. That's kind of the one thing I was missing. And then Dalvin Cook should go around this range. I would like that pick. And then Jalen Hurts. And of course, if Mahomes and Josh Allen are here, I like them just a little bit above Jalen Hurts. I expect them to go late too. Maybe Josh Allen's here. That's a possibility. Maybe Josh Allen goes before Mahomes in a lot of leagues. It's definitely possible as well. T. Higgins, huge fan of T. Higgins. I had him last year in a league, and I think he's only getting better and playing for that big-time contract, so I think he's going to play big-time ball this year. So I like T. Higgins a lot in the third round. Like, I would, my best teams that I've had, I've been stacked at receiver. Like, I had a legit star receiver number 1. So maybe it's not the perfect scenario if T. Higgins is your receiver 1, but to me, it's okay. Like, I think he can be a receiver 1. That's kind of like if you didn't get a receiver yet, make sure you get T. Higgins around this range if you don't have a receiver yet. ETN, I like a lot. I like the way he played last year and how much more involved each step of the way he's getting involved in Doug Peterson's offense. Key factor for them. So I think, remember, basically last year was a rookie. Even though he wasn't a rookie, he was like he was a rookie. So he's only going to continue to get better. So I like him. I had him in a couple leagues actually last year. And I like him even more this year. And Chris Olave, I think Derek Carr, and I had Olave too. I thought he was fantastic, and he was only a rookie. And I think Derek Carr is, a fantastic, quarterback. Like his style of play, like the deep ball specifically, and they kind of work together pretty damn well there. So I do like Olave potentially in the third round. But looking at, if they're gone, some other guys that I like. We got Aaron Jones. The Packers are going to run the shit out of the ball, plain and simple. I know they have a two-headed monster in there, but they're going to run the shit out of the ball. Aaron Jones is a very solid running back. He's going to be productive, so they're going to run more than they did in the past. So that's more action there. Calvin Ridley, very good receiver, obviously, but hearing very good things in training camp. And then Trevor Lawrence continuing to get better, so he should be very productive. And TJ Hawkinson is a very productive tight end, obviously a top 3 in production. So for fantasy, out of the tight ends. And it seemed like he meshed well with that Vikings offense, and he just got in there during the year last year. So another year, another offseason. And again, I really want to come away with one of the top tight ends there. So another guy that I'm really looking at around this range. I wouldn't be against these guys if those other guys are gone in the third round. Or who knows, some of those round 2 guys I talked about could be available in round 3. And then let's take a look at who to target next throughout the next, fourth round, fifth round, maybe sixth. We talked about Aaron Jones, Calvin Ridley, T.J. Hawkinson. Like if they're available and no one else is at the bottom of round 3, I'd be okay with it. But they should be available at the top of round 4. I love those picks in the top of round 4. Looking at round 4, 5, Dameon Pierce, Justin Herbert, probably the next option after those top, like the clear-cut top 3 quarterbacks. But kind of going back to Pierce, the Texans are going to play some smash mouth football. They're going to pound the ball, out physical other teams. That's what they're going to try to do. And Pierce is that type of back, so they're going to like him a lot. Terry McLaurin seems like it's pretty good value, round 4 or 5, around that range. Around 5, maybe. DJ Moore, same thing. They're going to scheme things up for him in Chicago. We actually saw it in the preseason week 1 game already. Screen passes coming to him. Alexander Mattison taking over for Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook was always a good pick, and it felt like whenever he was out, it was Alexander Mattison was a must start. Like, you have to start Mattison, and he got you big points, so maybe we're sleeping on him a little bit. Like, he's the full-time guy, so whenever he was the guy, which was a few times a season, he went off in fantasy. He went off in general, so I think that's a pretty good pick where he's, maybe a little bit of a sleeper where he's being projected, around round 5 even. So those are some other guys I really, really like. Taking a look at, in this page, it's quarterbacks and tight ends. Steals / sleepers, just kind of looking at where they're drafted. Geno Smith, he's the only quarterback I'm going to talk about as a steal. He was 5th in total fantasy points last year, 5th. Now, maybe you're predicting, Geno probably won't be as good as last year. I think he will be, at least close. But maybe a lot of people out there are saying that, but he's quarterback 15 right now. 5 total fantasy points down to 15, and now he's got a shiny new weapon in Jackson Smith and Jigba, along with those receivers that he already has. He's going to put up points, and he can move too if he has to. He can run if he has to. So Seattle might just be getting going with the Geno Smith era. They might be figuring out new ways to get better. So I think Geno Smith is an absolute steal. I feel a little more comfortable with one of those top quarterback, obviously. But if you missed out on those guys and you want to wait a little bit, you get a steal with Geno Smith. Or here's something else. Here's another scenario that I kind of like. I'm usually take a quarterback not too late. Let's get a pretty good quarterback. It's going to get a lot of points. And then I'll take my backup quarterback, my only other quarterback that I'll draft. I'll take him pretty late. Like the last 2 rounds always end up kicker and defense. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. But right before those last 2 rounds, it's usually my backup quarterback and then a backup tight end. But here's another scenario where maybe you get a Lamar Jackson where it's like, all right, really good fantasy quarterback, but he gets injured. I don't feel great about this. Or maybe it's Joe Burrow, which would be a little bit earlier than Lamar Jackson, in my opinion. So maybe you use your second quarterback pick maybe a little earlier than normal, but you take Geno Smith. I would like that. I would actually like that. So there's a scenario for you if you're looking for like a high quality backup in fantasy. That's your guy. Quarterback 15 and on average right now is ridiculous. What he did last year and the weapons that he has. Cole Kmet, down a little bit in the rankings. I think he just got going last year in the red zone. He was productive in yards the year before and last year as well. I think having more weapons is only going to open. I think they want to get the ball to the tight end. They want to get the ball to the tight end. I think having more weapons is going to open up things more for Cole Kmet. Greg Dulcich, I really like Dulcich for this year, and it's starting to pick up some steam. He's starting to heat up a little bit, kind of shooting up, his average draft position shooting up a little bit. But he looked good at the end of last year. They're going to scheme things open for him. He's going to get going in Sean Payton's offense. And then Juwan Johnson, I thought was fantastic last year. I had him in the league. And now he's got Derek Carr. Now he's got a better quarterback, legit red zone threat. Dawson Knox is way down there, way down there. And, yeah, they have Dalton Kincaid. They're going to use both. They're not going to replace Dawson Knox. They're going to use both. Knox, if you look at the end of last year, he was consistently finding the end zone. He's consistently productive. So the Bills figured something out, and they kind of want to gear towards that. Let's use more of the tight ends. Let's use 2 tight ends this year. So I think that's just going to open up things for Dawson Knox. Jake Ferguson, whoever the Cowboys tight end is going to be, is going to be productive. They let Dalton Schultz go because we don't need to pay a guy. The next guy up is going to be productive. So Ferguson's going to be a steal. And then Conklin, I thought, really got going. The Jets were starting to scheme things open for him, especially going across like shallow in the middle of the field. Now you got Aaron Rodgers to give him the ball. So that's big time as well. So those are some one quarterback and some tight ends that I think are sleeper/steals, guys to kind of keep in mind once you get a little later in the draft. And then more running backs and receivers for the same category. Javonte Williams is a hell of a ball player. I know it may be a little risky coming off the injury. I don't really view him as injury prone, though. Kind of had one injury. He's back from already. They seem like they're confident. Let's watch him in this weekend's preseason game. It sounds like he gets some action. So I hope you don't draft, quite yet, but keep an eye on that. Isaiah Pacheco, the Chiefs were using him more and more. He was getting better. And the Chiefs always try to like tweak some things, keep some things fresh. So maybe that they got like a legit running back that they can rely on. They can pound in between the tackles, inside. Maybe they just run the ball more and more. And they were starting to get him the ball through the air too. A.J. Dillon, I like both Packers running backs for fantasy because they're going to run the ball. They don't have Aaron Rodgers anymore. They would have actually won more games if they ran the ball more last year. I think Rodgers was checking out of runs. Jordan Love's going to do what he's told. And they're the name of the game for the Green Bay Packers is going to be running the football. Damian Harris seems like an absolute steal where he is at in drafts right now. I think people are so convinced that James Cook is the guy. He's the guy, and that's it. And I do think James Cook will be a breakout player, and he's going to get some action. He's going to run the ball. He's definitely going to catch the ball. But it's not just a one-man backfield at all. Damian Harris will get his carries. He will get his carries inside. He will get his carries in the red zone, on the goal line. The short yardage, it will be Damian Harris. He just has to stay healthy. But where he is going, that is one of my favorite steals, a little bit later in the draft there. Elijah Moore, I think, has been a little more productive than people give him credit for, and he's had bad quarterbacks. Now he has Deshaun Watson. The Browns were desperate for a slot receiver. They get a good one here. He's going to be productive. They're going to scheme things open. He gets separation. He can run routes. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, which was kind of hit or miss throughout the year last year. Early year, it was like, wow, I'm surprised this speed demon down the field, deep threat speed demon is not better with Mahomes. Like perfect pair. And he was so good with Rodgers, and you're like wondering, like, he was better with Rodgers than he was with Mahomes. But then he started getting going and make some big plays here and there. They also lost Juju. I think we're going to see MVS like really unleash this year. So I think where he's going, it could be a little bit of a steal as well. But he was one of those guys like get 0 points or get some pretty good points, like 14, whatever it may be. Romeo Doubs, I think there's a shot he could be the best receiver in Green Bay. I know Watson has a lot of upside. He gets those touchdowns for fantasy, obviously, and he's kind of like a gadget guy at the same time. But Doubs is like more of the complete receiver. Good things about him in training camp, so I do like him. And Corey Davis is a major steal way down there. I think people are scared because they have Garrett Wilson, they have Mecole Hardman, they signed Alan Lazard, a Rodgers guy, to that big deal. They have Randall Cobb, but to me, talent-wise, I think Corey Davis is the second best receiver after Garrett Wilson on that team because he's a receiver. He's a wide receiver that can play in the slot as well. He's a do-it-all, is kind of what I'm trying to say. Do-it-all type receiver. He hasn't really had a quarterback at all like Aaron Rodgers, so I think, and he's looked good in camp. So that's a guy that could end up being the Jets' second best receiver. With Aaron Rodgers behind Garrett Wilson, so I do like him as well. Love these rookies. I got 2 pages of this. Bijan, we already talked about Bijan. I like him in the first round. This could be the best fantasy running back this year. I could see it. The way he runs, the fresh legs, the way he catches the ball, the Falcons' offense, the way it is built for running backs. They're going to get him the ball. Where are they drafting? Jahmyr Gibbs, another one. It is a little scary because you got him and Montgomery. How many carries is Gibbs going to get? He'll get some carries, but they're going to throw him the ball a lot. Backfield, downfield, they'll scheme some things open. They'll line him up in the slot. They'll line him up outside, try to get a mismatch, try to get a linebacker out there. So I see some scheme plays with that. Jordan Addison, looking good in training camp, looking good in that first preseason game. Guy's going to get separation, going to take Adam Thielen's spot. He's going to get production. Only Jefferson being there is only going to open things up for Addison. That O'Connell offense, they're going to throw the ball. Cousins pretty accurate. Addison's going to get the ball through the air a lot. Dalton Kincaid, would love this. I love this. This is a big receiver. Don't really get it mixed up here. He's not a Dawson Knox tight end. They're going to play both. He's a big receiver that is a mismatch that is hard to cover. He's going to get open. He's going to get production. A lot of it. It's going to be tricky for defense because it's a type of piece the Bills haven't had out there on offense. It's type of piece, so it's going to be tough to game plan for. Michael Mayer, it's a rookie tight end, but a different type of tight end. I think like a perfect option for Jimmy Garoppolo. They're going to give him the ball. He's a good route runner. You can line him up anywhere. They're going to give him the ball in the red zone, in the end zone as well. Zach Charbonnet, I'm thinking he's going to get some action. I think it's going to be a little bit more split than people think. Of course, Kenneth Walker is going to get more of the action, but a little more split than people think. Charbonnet is actually pretty good. Catch the ball out of the backfield and downfield as well. So I'd watch out for that. Luke Musgrave, one of my favorite ones here. Some of these tight ends I love, but I love me some Luke Musgrave. The vibes I'm getting right now, a lot of good things in training camp. It's another one that's like a big receiver. He's a big, long receiver. He'll go up and catch the ball. Maybe too big of a body for guys to handle. And we saw the Packers add multiple tight ends, and they added a receiver, in the draft as well. But I think they're going to gear this towards running the football and then opening up the play action passes to tight ends. And you got a mismatched tight end here. Musgrave is a gem of a pick, down in the draft. And then Tank Dell could be receiver one for the Texans. He could be receiver one, big time separator. Stroud, a big fan of him. We saw some good things in preseason, see some good things in training camp. So I do like Tank Dell as well. I want to get my hands on some of these rookies. I really like some of these rookies. And here's some more. Josh Downs, who I was a fan of out of North Carolina. I mean, they have Pittman, like a possession contested catch receiver. They have Alec Pierce, possession contested catch type receiver. The Colts always have those types of receivers. Like, those are the guys that they use. But now you have a speed demon that can play in the slot, get separation, and he actually can go up and catch the ball for a little guy. Like, this is exactly what the Colts need. He's going to be active right away. He's, Anthony Richardson with his arm strength, wants to rip it deep. This is your best bet to get deep and get open. Jalen Hyatt, pretty similar. Deep speed demon, deep threat, really looking good in training camp. Pretty wide open on who can take over like the role of the top couple receivers here. So Hyatt is a pretty good shot. Marvin Mims was a top 10 receiver. No, he wasn't talked about like that. He was a top 10 receiver in the draft class, and the Broncos drafted him, and they didn't have like early picks. They drafted him where they drafted him for a reason. They wanted a receiver. They're not sure about theirs, and not all of them. They're sure about some of them, but and they've had some injuries already. So Marvin Mims will get his action. Tank Bigsby, I think there'll be a pretty good role for him. ETN, not going to be able. ETN will be very active. He can run the football very well, but they want to get him the ball in space. They want to give him the ball through the air. They want to be able to bring a guy in to take some carries on inside. So Bigsby will be that guy. He's a very solid running back, obviously. And Zach Evans, who was a steal in the draft by the Rams, an explosive running back. And the Rams, it's kind of open to take that RB1 or maybe RB2. I mean, right now it's Cam Akers RB1, but I think it's open to take one or two there. So Zach Evans, another guy to look out for there. So some guys I'd be aware of. I'm not saying absolutely don't draft these guys, but these are guys like if there's somebody else on the board that like are in the range, I would rather take somebody else. I had Lamar Jackson last year, so I wasn't too thrilled about that. But it just, my experience with taking guys with durability concern just has not gone well. So I don't want to be, really your fantasy football roster is so small. It's smaller than, Lamar Jackson gets hurt, a giant roster at the Ravens, an NFL roster the Ravens have, those seasons pretty much, they don't make the playoffs, If our fantasy rosters are much smaller than an NFL roster, so if your quarterback who's supposed to be scoring the most fantasy points, on your roster goes down, you're pretty much screwed. So why take that chance, sometimes? So, but if he's on the field, he's going to be extremely productive, especially in this Todd Monken offense. Saquon Barkley I'd be aware of, especially where he's being drafted like middle of the first round. I wouldn't do that. He got a load of carries early on last year, but the second half of the year, he was lucky to get 18 carries. He was mainly getting less than 15, and they were trying to find ways to win through the passing game more, and that could be the case going forward. They don't want to value the running back position a whole lot. They don't want to have to pay him a whole lot going for the running back position a whole lot going forward. So they're finding ways to get the passing game going more. And they use Barkley 30, 35 carries early in the year to kind of get things going. So I'm looking at that second half of the year where he's very good, a key piece. He's a very good player. He's going to get fantasy points, but I wouldn't expect. Look at the difference. First half of the year, second half of the year. I'd expect. And was there a difference in talent level? Absolutely not. Same talent level for Saquon Barkley. First half of the year, second half of the year. So I'm not saying otherwise. I'm just saying the usage where this offense is gearing towards. So which usage, fantasy points kind of go hand in hand there. Josh Jacobs, so good last year, only getting better. I worry a little bit because he's not there right now. But with the Raiders, I don't think they're going to pay him long term on a multi-year deal. So they might start to gear towards a Zamir White or somebody else. So they might take some carries away from Jacobs. Not insanely concerned about him as long as he shows up. And then Jonathan Taylor, that whole situation. Is he hurt? Is he not? He's leaving the team. Is he getting traded? Is he holding out? The Colts don't really care if they have him. Almost Ursay doesn't. It sounds like so. I don't know. I just stay away from that. And he wasn't overly impressive last year, but should be in that Steichen offense, that style of offense. If he's on the field, he should be very deadly. Cooper Kupp. I was saying a month ago that I wasn't really worried about him getting hurt again, but he already got hurt again, so a little scared about that. And he is comparing to the receivers that he's being compared to, those guys got fresher legs. They're younger than him. They're healthier than him. So I gear towards some of those other guys. Kenneth Walker, interesting one because he was so good as a rookie last year, but they bring in Charbonnet for a reason. They want to split more than you think. And Walker, even though he was very productive, there was times where he would drive me nuts and actually drive the Seahawks nuts. Why they might be looking for their running back, he would bounce too many things outside, and even if you get good yards on that, so, in the NFL they'll go, yeah, you weren't really supposed to do that. Let's get a guy in there that'll do it right. So I do think Walker will be the RB1. He'll be productive. He's good overall, but I'd watch out for being more split than you think. And Charbonnet can catch the ball, I think, in my opinion, better than Walker. Or he should be able to at the next level. Then Keenan Allen. Where are his legs at this stage of his career? Been in the league for so long, and I've had him too, and he's gave me some good games. But and they add Quentin Johnson. Not that he's the same style receiver, but add another big time receiver, so take some reps away. How many games will he be there? Will he be gearing towards being what we saw Adam Thielen take a step down last year, lose some of his legs, that far in his career? Could Keenan Allen kind of be going that route? And the other pair of players I'd be kind of cautious with are the Ravens and the Eagles running backs because of injury concern. Plain and simple. Who they have, they're exciting running backs. They're good running backs. I'm just scared of them because of injury concerns there. And I guess I'd say minus Kenneth Gainwell for the Eagles, because Kenneth Gainwell I think could be a sleeper or steal pretty late in the draft. I think people focus on the other two are Penny and Swift, fantastic running backs, fantastic talents, just always injured. So that's the tricky part. And then you can go ahead and pause your screen here. I'm sorry for the graphic. They're a little small. You can see them though. Just pause your screen. Those are 3 separate mocks. One with the 4th pick, one with about the 7th pick, and then one with the 11th pick. Those are ones I felt really good about, and you'll see some of the players that I mentioned throughout this video pop up quite a bit. And there's some other players that I did not mention in this video, but I ended up liking doing there's always those extra players you got to look for. Kind of got to know the range there, where they're going to go, and kind of look at the quarterbacks. That's the one thing I want to mention. Yeah, I got Geno around earlier than in the other drafts. I got Kirk and Daniel Jones. Geno is a gem of a pick down there. Geno Smith. I like Cousins, Daniel Jones. Those are kind of the next options down there, especially with that Vikings offense, the high-powered pass attack, it seems now. And then the Giants are trying to gear towards that, so I do like those. But Geno, if you have the option between those 3, Geno's a gem of a pick down there. 5th in total fantasy points last year. Pretty ridiculous. Where I was getting Dalvin Cook felt pretty damn good. Yeah, I like these mocks, and you see I'm really targeting a top tight end. I have a specific type of tight end I'm looking for, this year. But I really like the players I got. And again, I didn't do a mock, but if I had the 1st overall pick, that would be Justin Jefferson. And Bijan's a guy I really, really would like too. So if I was at a pick, in between the second 2 there were, obviously Jefferson's off the board, but Kelsey's off the board. Guys like that are off the board. Bijan would be the guy I would be targeting, so keep that in mind too. But I like the players that I mentioned throughout this video very much. But some other things to go over. And again, if you were looking at that mock, so I apologize, but you can kind of go back and pause it. Some tips. These are kind of obvious to some people. They might sound stupid to some people because they're so obvious, but don't be afraid to take a tight end early. I've kind of told myself this year because after the legit, sure thing top tight ends, and then Kittle's up there as well, but Kittle does have some injury concern, but he is up there. I didn't really mention him much in this video, and there's other great ones, like Goddard's great, guys that could be great, Waller, Pitts, there's some risk with those guys, but hearing good thing about Waller, but in training camp, but there's so many teams in every league every year that you'll have a tight end where you don't know what you're going to get. You might get a 2-pointer, even though he's a good tight end. You might get a 2-point week, and it kind of sucks, So grab a great tight end, and you can find a receiver where you would have got that tight end's going to get 2 points. That'll probably get you 8 points or something per week. So I want to be safe at tight end. I don't want to be messing around. I want to feel good about that spot because there is a major difference. If you have Kelsey or Andrews or Hawkinson and you don't, or compared to not having them, there's a major difference in points. Again, we're the receiver in that range of the draft, not that major. It's something it's been a thing, but it's more of a thing now. Don't wait too long for a quarterback. Something I've always said is, quarterback scores most points in fantasy. Like, who has the most points in a year? It's quarterback. Keep it that way. If you have a quarterback that might score your most points each week, or you don't, like you got a running back or a receiver in a PPR that is scoring your most points in the year, either that receiver went freaking crazy, like insanely crazy, or you just got a bad quarterback. You don't want it to be that kid. Keep it that way is what I like to say. Quarterback score your most fantasy points. Keep it that way. All right. You don't absolutely have to get the best of the best. You will feel a little more comfortable with one of those guys. I'd say the top 4 guys or so. Taking a running back in the first couple rounds isn't a must anymore. It kind of was at one point because the drop off was ridiculous. But these days, even some of those top guys are like, they're great, but they're questions. There's some questions like McCaffrey injury concern, Eckler injury concern, Barkley, are they using him less? You have a rookie kind of taking over there with Bijan Robinson. There's other guys kind of sneaking up. Josh Jacobs wasn't supposed to be that good last year. He's kind of sneaking up. You can get some really solid ones in round 2, going into round 3, going into round 4. New guys taking over as starters, rookie running backs. You're finding steals later and later. Sometimes you don't even know you got a steal until the season starts. The waiver wire has been ridiculous at running backs. Like, this guy ended up being really good. The starter got hurt because a lot of teams have good 1-2 punch. Waiver wire ends up being huge. Or the guys you got late in the draft. So I think people panic about running backs too often. You used to have to. Not really anymore. I'm not saying don't take a running back in the first 2 rounds. Just don't be in a panic. Don't be in a panic about buys. Everyone's like, this player's so much better than that player, those players, so I want him, but he has a buy that's kind of similar to some of my team. Obviously you don't want all these players with the same buy. Be smart about that, but some people end up giving themselves a worse team than they could have had because of that. Don't do that. Every single year I've taken a kicker and defense the last 2 picks. I end up playing defense by week anyways. A big reason is you can't really predict too well who will be the turnover creating defenses. A lot of it is luck. So I end up playing. You have an idea. I end up taking the defense I want for week 1. I kind of play it by week 1, and so I usually pick that last or second to last, and make sure you're only taking one of each of those things. Avoid injury-prone players. Yeah, again, you're think about an NFL roster. An NFL roster is massive. It's massive, but if one big-time player, one starter gets injured, it could cost the whole team's season. And your fantasy roster is way smaller than an NFL team. So one injury, could cost your whole season. Could be that much of a difference because there's other good teams out there in your league, your other good rosters. So don't gamble. If you got one on in your starting lineup, that's fine. Don't gamble too much. I've been there as well. Stick with your gut on things. Like if you, I like that I gave you a list of players that I liked. If you like one more than the other, stick with your gut on things. You don't want to be kicking yourself after we're like, oh, my gut was telling me this. I went against it. I hate that. So, don't go against your gut too much there. And then kind of my must do / my needs, kind of what's in my head. I've talked about this throughout this video a ton. I'm drafting a top tight end. I gotta have a top tight end. It might happen. It might happen to me. It might happen to you that I don't get one of those 3 tight ends. It's such a small group of guys there. It might be tough, but I really, really want Kelsey, Andrews, or Hawkinson. These are big time wide receiver yard like tight ends here that I'm going to be comfortable with every single week. I don't have to worry about it. If I don't get one of these guys, Kittle's up there with them in terms of production, but I consider him, but I'm going to worry about the injury and the quarterback situation with the 49ers, but I consider him. And, I don't want people to get it the wrong way here. Again, we're talking about fantasy football. Other guys like Goddard, like Kittle, Waller, could be as talented as these guys. So that's not really what I'm saying. Just for fantasy, these are the guys that I want. If I don't get these guys, they might pop in my head. Kittle, Waller, Goddard. But I might wait. If I don't get one of these 3 guys, I might wait for, one of those steals, one of those guys a little bit later and use those picks on some better, important running backs, receivers, quarterback. I might wait for the Dalton Kincaid, the Cole Kmet, the Greg Dulcich, players like that. Because there's a drop off after these top guys. So that's where my head's at. I really want one of the top tight ends. I must come away with at least one of these top receivers. And most of us, including me, will probably maybe only get one of these guys I listed. And of course, there might be more talented receivers than in this list. Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle. These are the guys that my gut are telling me that I really want. But there's other talented receivers. Justin Jefferson would be the first overall pick. Chase would be next. Second, third, fourth. Tyreek Hill's obviously a great pick. Diggs, I've had him so many years. He's done me right. A.J. Brown's a safe pick in second round. Lamb, maybe late first, early second. Like him. Adams, probably early second. He's been fantastic in fantasy. Garrett Wilson, I feel great about. Amon-Ra St. Brown's been super productive. He's hard to cover for the slot. The Lions, Jameson Williams situation, he's clearly the best receiver, St. Brown right now. And then Higgins, I like Higgins a lot as well. So one of these guys for me, I guess for you could throw Waddle, you could throw Kupp in there, but these guys, one of these guys for me has to be my receiver one. If I get two of these guys, I'm looking pretty stacked at receiver, and that's been pretty good for me in the past as well. Starting QB has to be a pretty good one, and I mean good one for fantasy. Mahomes, Allen, Hurts are the obvious top three. I'd put Herbert next. Burrow, the injury's a little, I'd probably put Burrow over Herbert, but the injury's a little scary, but it's kind of a consistent thing that he's beat up in the offseason, preseason, training camp, whatever, but he's good in the regular season. Tough son of a gun in the regular season. So I'm not super worried about him. Lamar Jackson, I'm kind of just staying away from, even though he's going to be incredible. Like, if he stays healthy the whole year, he's going to be number one fantasy quarterback probably, but it hurt me last year, even though I still won somehow. Trevor Lawrence, I think will take a step up this year. Dak's going to be productive. I put Geno in there. Most people won't put Geno in this group of guys. But Geno was fifth in total fantasy points last year. Sure, there could be a drop-off. Maybe he won't be as good, but fifth, how much of a drop-off? And he's got, the weapons are ridiculous. He's got a trio of ridiculous receivers. And then Justin Fields, I guess to be determined if he figures out in the passing game, but he's going to run. He's going to run. If he can't figure out as a passer, he's going to run. He's going to get production that way. He's going to get fantasy points that way. They got better weapons for him out there, better offensive line. So he's going to get fantasy points. Honestly, he's probably a guy that I think other people would probably take earlier than me. I just feel comfortable with one of the other proven quarterbacks. That's just me. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. There was a lot in it. I'm going to put the timestamps in. It'll be something to keep handy, maybe screenshot some things for your fantasy draft. Hopefully this is very helpful. Everyone have different opinions, but these are the kind of things that the way I do them kind of worked out for me in the past. And these are players. There's players that I'll like. We saw it in the mocks that I didn't maybe talk about a whole lot or at all in this video. And there's guys I highlighted more. Those guys I really, really like. So, let me know your guys' thoughts there on in the comments on if you think I've missed a guy or maybe your strategy if you have something different. I've been really focused on the tight ends. That might surprise some people, but I really I really like that. My best teams ever have actually probably been loaded at receiver. So I always I think people kind of overdo it with the running backs a little bit, but there are certain running backs I like. Talk about that, but I always talk with you guys on Twitter, which you'll get if you're a Twitter sub, you'll get access to our private leagues, of course, which they're always very fun, but. Check that out. Links put in the comments for anything you're looking for. But that's going to wrap up this one. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Check out our other content on our channel. That is going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.